Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is navigating change. Change by its very nature is disruptive and uncomfortable most often. And we're going to have a conversation about what's the nature of change and how do we navigate it for our greatest unfoldment and fulfillment and fruitfulness. So until then, but before we get started, let's take a moment or two to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, all your molecules, all your electrons, creating this brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together, vigorously rub your hands together, feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, and the tickling and tingling when you stop, and allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So good to be with you this morning, this Friday morning. Welcome, Rosalind. So good to have you join us this morning. And today we're talking about navigating change. So change in and of its, I think, inherent to its nature is a discomfortableness, or I don't think that's a word, but is the discomfort that comes with it, the sense perhaps of disorientation. What's happening is that the roots of the old are retreating, retracting, falling away, and sometimes we feel rootless. Sometimes we feel like we're spinning or in a space of disorientation, unfamiliarity, right? If change by its nature is an introduction of the unfamiliar. And so while change can be good or bad based on our valuations, right? Even good change is stressful often because we're deconstructing part of a system that had been in place to be allowing something new to emerge. And so while many of us are committed to embracing change, it can be a stressful experience, and changes take place on all different levels. When we go through emotional growth and transformation, there's a lot of change that's taking place, and we can sometimes feel confused or separate from ourselves or disoriented or out of balance as we're trying to find new footing on shifting sands, so to speak. And it occurs to me that the more we are, and the more we empower ourselves to be in flow, to hold with open hand, to allow ourselves to not be so attached to our ideas of how things are, or our ideas of how we are or who we are, the more fluidity we'll be able to bring to this process of change and transformation. The more adaptable we'll become. And it makes me think of our conversation about resilience and how resilience can be the enemy of change. Good morning, Kimberly. How great to have you here with us this morning. It's been a while. We're talking about navigating change. And when we talk about resilience or adaptability, sometimes the idea is that we get to stay the same regardless of changing circumstances. And oh, interesting, Rosalind. I love it. Rosalind says, wishing change from the couch, being too comfortable. I'm guilty. What metrics to use? I guess it requires knowing where you're going. That vision can be unattainable, can seem unattainable. We were talking about generating the field yesterday, and how when we're looking to move into a place of transformation, it's often beyond, I love this term, a promise beyond ableness, that we don't know how. We don't know the path from here to there, but we have a commitment to make the journey, like to move in that direction, to go toward a destination that may seem unattainable, because we don't know how. And yet the promise beyond ableness is the commitment to move into that and embrace the change that is required. So I don't know that it's interesting when we talk about metrics, because we don't know what we don't know, right? Like when we have a vision, it's the intentionality, it's the commitment to that vision that moves us forward, and that galvanizes or energizes the supporting influences from our environment and beyond, when we have that commitment, like staying true to that vision, that intention. And so when we're navigating change, it's a time of disruption, right? In order to change, in order to truly transform, and maybe there's a distinction between change and transformation, but in order to truly transform, we need to be grounded in a commitment that it's interesting that to use the term grounded, because at the same time, like the grounds are shifting. So finding a North Star to guide ourselves allows us perhaps to move with, dance with the changing in the ground itself. It can be scary to move into the places of the unknown, right? Especially when we ourselves are changing, when we ourselves are uprooting patterns that have been long standing that we've identified with, like believing that we are a certain way and then shifting that orientation, it puts everything out of balance. It puts everything in a state of flux, kind of like watching, the everything gets stirred up and waiting for the dust to settle and seeing the new patterns that emerge as there's this resettling. So when you're saying, Rosalind, I guess it requires knowing where you're going. Maybe we have an intention of where we're going to go, so to speak, but not necessarily have any idea how we get from here to there. And that idea of where we're going can carry us in a way that we can perhaps float above the chaos of change itself. And so the chaos of change can be manifest inwardly or outwardly or both. I think that humanity is in for a lot of change. Kimberly says, this is such a good thing, Kimberly. Kimberly says, I thought I didn't need to go to AA. I now know I need to keep my connection and carry the message of hope. So, Kimberly, that's so much about creating the field also, because in our own lives that may be ingrained in or reminding us of patterns that we choose to change or transform, we need to create a field that supports us in our new commitments, because the old environment wants things to go back to the way that things were, so this is part of navigating change, is finding and creating and generating a field that supports the change, because otherwise there's like an inertia that wants to pull us back into the old established patterns. And so giving ourselves the support is a really profoundly important aspect to implementing long-standing change. So how do we generate that field? How do we provide that support for ourselves and each other? How do we find other people too who can support us? So good for you to recognize the need for that support system and to reach out to provide it for yourself, because that's how, as we move through these periods of change, we can do things to help support ourselves. For instance, we can maybe journal. That helps a lot of people. We can meditate. We can have processes that ground us. And doing it all in isolation can be really challenging. So developing community around our path of change is also a very valuable and supportive thing to do. So Kimberly says, absolutely. I know it's my setup saying I don't want or need to go. Yeah. So maybe looking at it as a gift you give yourself instead of I need to, It's that you have a commitment and you can give yourself the gift of support. That might be another way to look at it that offers you more incentive. So but the thing is with change, we often, as much as we might want it, we often resist it with great intensity. even though it's something that we've chosen for ourselves, path of change, or transformation, we often find ourselves in resistance, wanting to go back to the same old, even though the same old might be really destructive and draining of our life energy. The familiarity of it offers some comfort, right? And I guess we get to take action beyond that inclination to drift into comfort, right? For comfort's sake. And sometimes change is thrust upon us. And this is something that I think humanity is going to be contending with, that there's lots of change that is going to, if we continue in the direction we're going, there's lots of change that's going to be thrust upon us. And the question is, how do we navigate that change with some semblance of grace? That's the dance. That's the tightrope that we get to walk. This balancing act of trying to find grace in the face of change, and it's not always there to be found. And grace isn't necessarily the most important thing. Sometimes it gets ugly. Change can be ugly, and what I mean by ugly is just deeply disruptive and confusing and emotional in a way that is, where we feel at a loss. We feel at a loss for the familiar, right? And not knowing where to go. And oftentimes the response to that can be anger or sadness or depression or confusion, all kinds of feelings that are all stirred up. And it's making me think of a session that I had with a client yesterday that was really, really awesome. I'll tell you about that in a second. Kimberly says, nothing constant, but change constantly. It was my motto for a while. And whenever I felt overwhelmed, it helped me let things pass. That's beautiful. Nothing constant, but change constantly. Yes. Well, that's the constant, is that everything is changing in some way or another. And it's funny how we try to keep things the same, in the name of what we call stability. But I want to, Rosalind, I see your comment, but before I speak to it, I want to talk about this thing that happened with the client yesterday, who was feeling very overwhelmed, who was feeling, and actually had physical vertigo, like the dizzying pace of change and demands and all kinds of demands of life. And in her session, what came up was this electrical kind of humming sound, and it was kind of staticky and filled with all this disruptive energy. And then what emerged was a singing bowl that had this tone. And she was able to identify the tone as C sharp. And she looked it up, and it said that it was the tone of Om and the connection with the earth. And as she was toning this, she just kept toning it and being with the sound, not thought, not imagery, just being with this sound. What she noticed was that her body started relaxing. What she noticed was that she started feeling grounded, and that this was the tone of Mother Earth that was helping, that just showed up in her session to calm her and ease her and ground her. And it can be something that simple. What happened was that her vertigo disappeared as she was toning. And that it can be that simple to bring ourselves to a place of presence. That's really what we're looking for, is to find ourselves in a place of presence that is beyond time and space and change, that is the ever constant. And that when we are present to that space of the ever constant, then we can navigate change. And so finding a practice that may be as simple as that toning to come back and be grounded and find our own center, it then allows us to move through and experience that change in grace. So Rosalind says, having support from others for help. So not feeling like you have to do it on your own. I think this notion that we can do it on our own is not the most, not necessarily the best idea, not necessarily the best solution. We are all connected after all. So Rosalind continues, a life coach or a group of peers who have the same goal. The gift of support for self may be tools like taking 20 minutes or other time blocks to immerse oneself in the new field. 100%. And that's what we're just talking about, for instance, with the toning, like training the nervous system and growing new neural pathways to continue in the desired direction. Journaling, a form of visualization and possibility. Exactly, Rosalind. 100%. And so what we are doing, and what that toning, for instance, would do, is to help retrain neural pathways, grow new neural pathways, retrain the nervous system, give yourself a space of safety and ease, that in change, in times of change and disruption, what happens is that we get locked into adrenal responses and fight or flight and panic mode, and we lose our ground. Oftentimes we can lose connection with self because the change just shakes us out of that place of connection and centeredness. So I agree. Kimberly says to Rosalind, beautiful. I agree. Well spoken. So finding this space within ourselves, finding access to the space within ourselves that is centered and grounded, is one means of navigating change. Another means is to find a group, find others who are able to be supportive of us within the change and building that field for our own evolution, for us to grow into, and to keep alert to that field so that it too can grow. stagnation is death. At least, in my perspective, if we're stagnant, we're dying or dead. And that there's always growth and change. And as we learn to move with it rather than resist it, then we have so much more grace and so much of a more enriching experience. When we are able to flow in the direction that the change is taking us, when we're able to harness the energy of that change to create something new. It's in our resistance to what is that we create tremendous pain, suffering, despair, disruption for ourselves and for others. And what came to mind as a flash, like we see so many ills of the world right now, so many challenges that we have. And what popped into my head, it seems sort of like a non sequitur, but I don't think it really is. What came to my head was this notion of plastics and the plastic pollution that we're experiencing and that we're contributing to ongoingly. And whereas we have perceived the plastics as a problem, what we can also begin to do is to see it as an untapped resource, not to continue producing more and more and more of it, but that we can transform that problem into something that can be a resource. So there's so much energy, literal energy tied up in plastics that if we are able to harness and redirect that energy, that it can be a good resource in the process of cleaning it up. And Kimberly says that they should ban plastics. I'm there with you, Kimberly, or we should find ways to make organic plastics that are recyclable and that degrade, different solutions around plastics. Kimberly also says so many possibilities that surround us. Surrender and find ourselves with an infinite abundance, with peace, love, and joy, and giving back. That's beautiful, Kimberly. Thank you for that. And on that note, I will wish you a wonderful Friday and a beautiful weekend. And we'll wrap it up with that. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network and Enlightened World Living. And I wish you a wonderful, wonderful weekend of discovery and joy. And so I hope to see you again really soon. And until next time, lots and lots of love.